Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are jumping straight into a highly specific technical tutorial on SASB activity metrics, specifically for the metals and mining sector. If you're preparing sustainability reports or analyzing these mining companies, you already know that raw data, well, it's really only half the battle. You absolutely need scale. You need context. So let's unpack exactly how to report that operational scale using the official framework.
First things first, let's establish the authority of the framework we're looking at. The SASB standards are officially under the stewardship of the ISSB and the IFRS Foundation. So this isn't just some arbitrary set of rules, right? This is literally the globally recognized baseline for sustainability-related financial disclosures. Understanding this framework ensures the data you prep or the data you analyze is speaking a universally understood language. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. Context on the SASB mining standards. 2. What are activity metrics? 3. Metric A on tracking production. 4. Metric B on the workforce breakdown. And finally, 5. Normalizing data for comparison.
Section 1. Context. SASB mining standards.
So, the SASB framework defines the metals and mining industry as this incredibly complex, interconnected web of operations. We are talking about the whole shebang. Everything from extracting raw metals deep underground to refining them, all the way to wholesaling those finished products globally. It covers quarrying stones, producing ores, smelting, manufacturing, and providing comprehensive mining support activities across these massive, vertically integrated global entities.
Section 2. What are activity metrics? Now ask yourself this really crucial question. How can stakeholders like investors or regulators possibly compare the sustainability data of vastly different sized operations? I mean, if company X uses 1 million cubic meters of water and company Y uses 10,000, is company Y automatically more sustainable? Well, not necessarily. If company X is a globally integrated giant and company Y is just a tiny local quarry, comparing their raw water usage is kind of like comparing apples to elephants. We absolutely need a common denominator.
And that brings us to the actual definition. Activity metrics are quantitative measures that quantify the scale of specific activities or operations by an entity. While your standard sustainability metrics might measure, say, greenhouse gas emissions, water withdrawn, or hazardous waste, activity metrics are essential because they measure the raw, absolute scale of the business itself. They're basically the anchor that grounds all your other sustainability data.
Looking directly at the official source material, Table 2 outlines the exact mechanics of the two specific activity metrics we need to report for the sector. That's EMMM000.A covering production and EMMM000.B covering the workforce.
Section 3. Metric A. Tracking production. So, preparers have to clearly delineate between two very distinct production categories here. We've got the raw, unrefined metal ores extracted from the ground versus the finished processed metal products. Remember just a minute ago when we talked about vertically integrated companies? Well, this separation is exactly why that matters. A company might mine a massive amount of ore but only process a fraction of it themselves, selling the rest. By separating these two categories, the standard basically forces a company to paint an accurate picture of where their operational scale actually sits in the value chain.
And when you're reporting this quantitative production data, it is absolutely critical to use the required unit of measure. You can't just use pounds or short tons or some arbitrary volume metric. The standard explicitly requires reporting in saleable metric tons. Notice the word saleable there. We aren't just weighing every single rock that gets moved, we are quantifying the scale of the actual commercial product generated.
Section 4. Metric B workforce breakdown.
Now, this metric dictates that a company must report their total overall headcount, but it adds a really fascinating and vital requirement. You must specifically disclose the percentage of that workforce made up of contractors. The SASB standards define direct employees as those on the payroll, whether full-time, part-time, or seasonal. But contract employees are individuals not on the payroll, but whom the entity still supervises or manages, like independent contractors or temp agency workers.
To put this into perspective, if we look at an illustrative split of, say, 60% direct employees and 40% contractors, it reveals some really vital indicators. So why does SASB actually demand this? Well, mining is an inherently hazardous industry, right? A heavy reliance on contractors can drastically change a mine's risk profile. It impacts things like training consistency and overall safety culture. This single percentage provides massive context to operational risk when an investor is evaluating things like fatality rates or workforce health.
Which brings us to Section 5, normalizing data for comparison.
This right here is the crucial reporting formula. Step 1. You use the activity metrics to quantify the exact scale of operations. Step 2. You combine that scale with the specific sustainability impacts, things like emissions or water use. And Step 3. This mathematical combination yields an intensity ratio, which facilitates a true apples-to-apples comparison between any two companies completely regardless of their size.
Let's look at how this brilliantly plays out in practice with a few examples straight from the standard's broader topics. Take water management. The standard asks for total water withdrawn in thousands of cubic meters. If we take that raw number and divide it by our activity metric, which is saleable metric tons produced, we suddenly get a water intensity figure. We now know exactly how much water it takes to produce 1 single ton of metal. Or look at workforce safety. The standard asks for the all-incidence rate for injuries. Knowing the sheer scale of the total number of employees is what actually gives that safety incident rate its true context.
This direct quote from the SASB overview document flawlessly summarizes everything we've just been talking about. Activity metrics are, quote, intended for use in conjunction with the metrics to normalize data and facilitate comparison. They aren't meant to just stand alone in a vacuum. They are literally the mathematical key that unlocks the value of every single other piece of sustainability data you report.
So as you prepare your next report or analyze a mining company's latest disclosures, ask yourself this: are you merely listing a silo of raw facts, or are you truly leveraging operational scale to tell a comparable, meaningful story? Because data without scale, it's really just noise. Activity metrics are exactly how you turn that noise into insight. Thanks so much for joining this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.